We've all seen the movie The Matrix. It was interesting and fun on the big screen of the TV, but has it become a bit too real in your own life? Are you seeing glitches in the Matrix and trying to figure out what's happening? Have you been told that you've been tricked and that you need to fight against what they've done to you? The deception. Whether you're just beginning to notice, or if you've been searching for a more peaceful and congruent way to live without battling them, you're in the right place. I'm Ken, and I'll be joined by Eliza and Raina Stella. Let's explore together on the Liberty Ark. Back again to the Liberty Ark Podcast, where Ken, me, and Eliza and Raina Stella are having a conversation primarily inspired by the book, The Great International Heist, by authors Rebecca and Jonathan Rodrigues. And we're working through it together and trying to relate it to experiences that we've all kind of noted, and you may have noted along the way too. So we hope this is useful to you. So welcome, guys.
Hello, my friends.
Great to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
So the title, The Great International Heist, kind of connotes something intentional, I think, don't you? Heists don't happen by accident.
That something is being taken.
Mm-hmm. And it's being purposefully taken.
And internationally. Yeah,
yeah, internationally. That's right. It's not a local occurrence.
Not located.
Mm-hmm. So the Liberty Ark, we're primarily discussing liberty and freedom, and that includes liberty and freedom in making decisions. And I think a lot of people kind of think they have freedom to make decisions, but do you ever feel like you're being influenced or manipulated in any way? And the decision that you make, although you were able to make your decision, you may have felt influenced in some way. In fact, we're calling social media people influencers nowadays, which is kind of interesting. And to me, influence is kind of on the pendulum swing of manipulation, right? Where virtually everything has two sides of the same coin. One that's kind of seen as a positive thing, and the other side can be a negative thing, in my view.
Is that influence my choice? Am I truly choosing this, or am I being told basically told some options have consequences and some have rewards? That's manipulation, not choice.
Mm-hmm. So groups, cultures, countries have all kinds of perspectives that are influenced by others in the group, in my experience. And that could be, we talk about peer pressure as kids, which I think adults have just as much peer pressure as kids do for the most part. But there's all kinds of religious beliefs and cultural beliefs and so forth that have influence over reducing our true ability to freely make decisions, unless we purposefully pay attention and say, is this my decision? Or is this just the way I'm supposed to do it because I've been told I'm supposed to do it this way, or I've observed others doing it this way and decided that I don't want to be outside the norm. So we're going to read in the next section of the book. Eliza's going to read it, and then we'll kind of bring these concepts into play from what we pull out of this. Okay. I'm going to switch over to where the crowd sees these full screen, and Eliza is going to read this to us.
Thank you, Ken. And what a great book. The Path of Liberation, Prophecies and Perceptions. Throughout the world, numerous indigenous cultures have held prophecies and beliefs about alternating periods of suffering and bliss. These prophecies often describe a cyclical pattern where times of hell are inevitably followed by times of heaven. However, it's crucial to recognize that these beliefs, while comforting, might serve as mechanisms of control, fostering false expectations. For countless ages, humanity has been under the sway of indoctrinated belief systems that promote the idea that enduring worldly suffering will eventually lead to heavenly bliss. This narrative convinces people that no matter how dire or oppressive their current circumstances, a better existence awaits them in the afterlife.
So, any thoughts on that?
Well, the path of liberation really I think we have to be really go back to, you know, our childhood and really start thinking of our you know, upbringing. But before we even do that, I think we have to make sure that we understand that how many of us are stuck and don't even know that there is different paths that we can pretty much take. Or do we feel like we are stuck and that's the way it is and this is it and there's nothing we can do? And that's what we're here. Of course, this book is really opening up my eyes in regards to how, with how we can definitely take the information being provided here and figuring out the different ways we can, in a way, understand that there are different paths and it doesn't have to be the way that we were told it should be. And I really think we have to, as individuals, understand at the age we're in today, no matter what age you are, is that it really, growing up was not really our fault. We were born into a specific environment, we were brought into a specific household. Our upbringing definitely is a big part of our beliefs and our perception of life and really the path we're on. But I think we're at an age where we now can definitely start taking control and making sure that we can make change. We need to start making change now to improve where we're headed. The question is also, do you know where you are today so you can be able to, take action and take that step to getting to where it is you want to be. It doesn't have to be that way.
I think that gets down when I look back at the education system or even in my own family, which I was very, very blessed. But critical thinking wasn't taught. In other words, here are the options in life and what works for you. Would you like to go? It was more, this is how life is, this is the education, and this is what you should do with it. So that critical thinking piece is, for so many, was not part of the upbringing. But as you said, as adults, now we can adopt that mode of reality.
What strikes me from that is that, like with our upbringing, we're influenced, and I think the probably the best word for that in most situations is influence rather than manipulated, right? I think the people that are influencing us don't really have a negative intent for it, but influence can be abused, like anything can be abused, and used intentionally to manipulate. So I think we're all used to being influenced, and that's not necessarily anything that anybody did bad to us, but it's a very powerful tool that if some power that didn't have our best interest at heart got good at it, the masses could be manipulated. And I think there's probably quite a few historical examples of that happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I ask myself, has this been forever this way? Like, I mean, is it something new for us? Is it something that we have had to deal with in previous, like, say, for example, not just in our lifetime, parents, is it thousands of years ago that this has been taking place? So it's not a new thing. So why are we stuck in this position here of uh of the cycle, right? The cycle. Why are we still stuck here if we know that this is an ongoing, unless you guys can tell me that it has not been forever, but I feel like it's.
I think there's all kinds of historical um, ex, situations where that's occurred. I think the internet has probably created a very different situation now than in the past, where it can be done much more subtly. Like in the past I just got AI to give me a few examples. For example, in the medieval times, peasants were encouraged to endure poverty and war without protest, right? But you would know that if that's happening to you, right? That would be pretty evident. You may feel so at risk because only the king has stuff, right? And it's providing you protection. So it makes you more willing to put up with stuff because you're getting something called survival out of it. But we're not really in that kind of situation for the most part nowadays. So I think the manipulation, or the influence that moves its way to manipulation by people that don't have good intent for us, can be hidden a lot better and have people not realize it's even happening to them in any kind of intentional way. Whereas in the past, I think most of the situations were quite clear. Everybody kind of knew what was happening to them, but not accepting that manipulation had consequences that maybe were worse than accepting the manipulation in those experiences.
And sort of, it can be done not just locally, but internationally. Mm-hmm. And it's a subliminal thing, like you're bringing up, until it's not.
Right.
Until the scale has now tipped that there's no going back. And so the manipulators, now don't have to care about making it something subtle or subversive. Mm-hmm. And then that's a scary tipping point.
Yeah, I mean, locally, internationally, globally. I mean, is it the way it's supposed to be? Is it more of a natural law, or is this something that we as women, men, we've created? It's just seems like a lot of us that we may be in the thought process of, like, what is this, right? Being manipulated, but do we just go with the flow? Is this the way it's supposed to be?
Well, I think when you mention natural law, I think there is a natural law that's involved in it, in that people are manipulable, right? But what was it, like 20s or 30s? I forget exactly, when radio and advertising and that kind of thing really came into play, and groups were able to be spoken to, to which nowadays the entire world can be basically spoken to relatively quickly. Folks without good intent could study scientifically how to manipulate people and then apply it on a mass basis, which really, it could be done in the past within your kingdom, but not necessarily throughout large masses of the world. Whereas now, it can be pretty much, you can speak to anybody and pass information through like a viral spread, right? And people
So
pick it
fast.
up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so fast. And that's a scary thought, because there is a lot of noise out there. And I think it's a great thing, because it's now awakening us, right? As to before, it was kept very hidden from us. So it could be a good thing, but it is a scary thought. I guess my thought process here is how do we figure out, you know, where our beliefs came from, and where we can start to possibly either confirm that those beliefs are truth or move in a different direction because we've discovered, or we've studied it, or we've educated ourselves that that is not the way it's supposed to be. It can be this way if I want it, or it can be this way. So where do we start to figure this out?
I start personally, have for several years, started by questioning myself and my own decisions, right? Because I got no control over other people, don't want control over other people, let's put it that way. But we tend, in my experience, we tend to just act in a certain way or respond in a certain way and not take the time to question ourselves to see, am I really doing this because this is what I choose? And if you just get quiet and ask that question, I find that frequently, not so much anymore because I've gotten so used to doing it, but in the past, many times I would go, no, there's some kind of pressure. And sometimes you can't isolate it. You don't know what's causing it. But if you just go inside and listen rather than just do, right? You can become pretty aware of, hey, something, even if you don't know what, something has influenced me to have this perspective or this belief or to look at things in a certain way. And then that frees you up and gives you more liberty to make a choice that's a true free choice.
I think that's a great place to start, is self-assessment. I see I've seen the metaphor that is like life will carry you along. Say you're in a canoe, okay? You'll just, and you've probably heard it. You'll just go with the flow if you stop paddling. Okay, you're reactive if you need to be, but you're not proactive. When you start to paddle, you can actually dictate the flow of your life, the flow of your decisions. And it's a lot easier to just stick the paddle in the canoe and just go with the flow. A lot easier. So, but once that decision's made, that freedom, it's like, wow, it's the self-discovery is quite powerful. But it is a decision point.
Yeah, so starting with reflecting, I guess, from our childhood onward, and I find that it's probably easy to question ourselves, right? But what about when it comes to questioning and asking whys to other people? Like why, or even get other people's opinion, whether it's family members, friends, coworkers. I think that's where it becomes a little difficult because when you do sit down and in a quiet place and reflect on where all of this came from, where all of your beliefs came from, and you start asking yourself why, you try to understand, that may be the easy part. I think the hard part is when you now want to go out there and try to understand further. And some people don't take it well when you start to question. And shut you down.
That's actually, I think, a really important transition to capture, because when people do begin to gain more control over their own thoughts and beliefs and so forth, it can be such a enlightening thing to you that you just want to go out and share it with everybody. But not everybody's ready to do that. So you have to be pretty careful about how you approach, because once you kind of gain freedom of thinking on your own, you just assume everybody else wants that same freedom. But like Eliza was saying a while ago, it takes effort to row the boat the way you want it to. And not everybody, everybody has to weigh it out, right? Is it worth that effort to gain that freedom? And to some of us, it is. And to some other people, I think a pretty large number of people, it's just easier to put up with the suffering of having your boat show up wherever it shows up, rather than to gain control over it and put the effort in.
Yeah, they're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're okay with it because they do not really know like where we're headed or where they're headed.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy to think, but I wanted to ask, do you guys think that religion is a factor or it impacts, or how much does religion impact our perception and beliefs? What do you guys
Well,
think
if
there?
if I could agree with you both on just before we jump into the religion, which is a big factor, one of the big factors is what you said that we don't know perhaps one of the end goals. Where am I going? Because we're not taught that. In fact, we're taught the opposite of that. We will determine your end goal. That's not up to you. So, and a lot of times, as I've been blessed, it's been helpful to be part of a discerning community to help me better realize my possibilities of that goal. So, and that's huge. Like, there's no journey if you don't have at least something of mine in mind, that may be something internal, something external of where you would like to be. So, yeah, thanks for
That's
bringing
huge.
that up. I
Yeah,
had the
no,
same
that's
thought.
huge. Yeah, that's huge, definitely. And entering the conversation of um, what does impact our perception and beliefs. Like, I just feel a lot of us are stuck in that box, right? And I think it is um, a lot of different factors, but in general, I think breaking down those factors that impact us is a good thing. So again, one of the things that I feel might be a big impact on our perception of life and our beliefs is definitely possibly religion. But what do you guys think? Is that how does that impact us and how much
Well,
does it impact?
throughout my life growing up, especially, it impacted tremendously. It was a huge impact on me and controlled basically everything about my life. Now, it didn't feel aggressive. I mean, I grew up with it. It was a safe environment to live in, you know. And I don't know that it was actually a bad thing at all as a child, right? In fact, I think more chaotic type things creates a pretty difficult place for a child to grow up. But because the brain isn't even ready to take on the task of making free decisions, and that kind of gradually occurs as you get older. But if those decisions are controlled, you don't really exercise the muscle of free thinking, And like everything, you can swing completely over to the wild child that has no control over anything too, which is not great. So, too much stability or too little stability, either one is problematic. And by the time you get to be, late teens, early 20s, you should be relatively capable of switching over to personal decisions and away from as much influence from family and religion and so forth. I don't think there's a black and white moment, but I think there is a graduating time that that makes logical sense and that's useful just based on the way we develop. But once you're kind of into that mode, I think it's kind of hard to transition over. And a lot of people just kind of get locked into that and never test it or question it when the time comes that that would be the appropriate thing to do.
And I think that's a great point as far as the teens. What I have witnessed is maybe someone is in their teens choosing a pathway as far as what do I want to study, what do I want, how do I want to work. But when it comes to the learning institutions, I see a lot of young people, they're choosing what they want to study, but then they're more than ever told how to think, what to think. And it's gotten worse. That's been a big step change in the last, 20, 30 years in the university. So are we sort of back to square one or worse?
Yeah, in my experience with 10 years worth of university, that's a real indoctrination center. I mean, because they do have control over you, right? I mean, you're totally subject to them passing you through. And so you pretty much have to do what they want you to do in order to get to the end result that you're looking for. But there's a training process that happens in that experience.
Yeah, but it all began in not necessarily college or universities, right? It all began back when you entered preschool or kindergarten.
Right. Yeah, it all started back then, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's what I'm trying to say is as a child, it kind of makes sense, right? It's useful, it's safety and so forth, right? The other people are your protectors at that stage. But once you get up into junior high and high school and college, shouldn't that kind of transition away, and you should be encouraged to think on your own as opposed to follow the dictates, which in my experience, the more education you get, the more indoctrinated you get for the most part.
Yeah, I agree to that for sure. I guess it is definitely like with religion being such a touchy subject. At least it provides the initial guidance, right? But then you reach a certain age, and now it's time for you to take over and make your own calls. Um, how different is do you guys find like religion versus faith? Like how different is it? I feel like religion is more like a institution per se in the middle of, let's say, between you and your belief, your creator, right? But how do you guys feel uh, the difference between religion from faith is?
I see them as a parallel situation to statutes and regulations and rules under the legal situation, which frequently doesn't make any logical sense, but that's the rules, right? Versus doing what you know to be right and not harming anyone else, right? To me, faith is that parallel of going inside and seeing what's right for me, irregardless of what somebody else has chosen, and not seeing them as wrong or bad. Just I'm open to something that created all this, right? Rather than this all being an accident. But I have a real hard time believing anybody has the answer as to exactly what that source is. And I think having the stories and so forth of those explanations is very useful when you're young and when you're needing that stability. But to me, faith, I mean, I can't imagine living without faith, right? But I also can't imagine living again with the rules and regulations of a religious construct.
I agree that for me it's like the the rules, the religion is a set of rules and customs and traditions, but very rarely is integrated in there the spirituality side, the deep side of it. It's supposed to be perhaps where it begun, but I also equate religion and the rules and a lot of them just dictates, just like the statutes and codes of the law side and the legal side, I should say. So yeah, very much spirituality and faith for me is something very different. But we're uh, most of us, or so many of us, have held that something that you knew what it was from a very young age. But a lot of times it's the rules of religion, for instance, can even go against that, it's an uncomfortable thing where it should mesh. It doesn't always mesh.
So faith is like I guess personal belief and trust. Like our own personal beliefs and trust. Is that really like the general aspect or a big difference in regards to an institution bringing it to you with their guidance and their rules and regulations?
I think that's how I would see it. Yeah. It's your own interpretation as opposed to having some kind of external source tell you how it is.
So, strong faith, right? Strong faith without religion, right? Is that common? Is do you guys feel like that is common? And like many people find, I guess, deep spiritual meaning outside the boundaries of formal religion.
I believe that I know many who they connect to their spirit and to the relationship with some source, some higher power, but it's that direct. There's no intermediary there. Okay, that's faith, that's spirit versus those who choose a religion, one doesn't have to take the place of the other. But when one is when those say customs don't invite you to explore the faith and the spirituality side, then that's again, then that borders on manipulation because you're told to go against what is your natural being, and it's worth questioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Being living in different countries and being exposed to different cultures really opened me up on this, because I mean, it's interesting how different religions can be so incredibly different from each other, and each group be absolutely certain that they're the only ones that are right. And you'll see, many countries have a country religion, right? Isn't it kind of odd how all the people in that country chose to be that religion? Whereas on a worldwide basis, there's a whole lot of different religions. So if there weren't some kind of control mechanism purposefully being implemented by somebody, it would be hard for me to understand how massive numbers of people in a particular country would just freely choose one religion, and then massive numbers of people in another country would freely choose another religion.
Yeah, I mean, I find it surprising today in 2025, the authority that in small communities, um, to the country I travel to often, the authority still being, you see it in movies all the time, but never had I experienced that. It's actually still true to this moment that a priest has a lot of authority still in this community. Whatever that priest says goes, and people tend to definitely follow because they are the authority of that 2,000 population community that I visit. It's super interesting to see. It's actually scary because I see it all the time in the movies that I watched in the past. Um, that many years ago, thousands of years ago, how much authority a priest had. But I see it today too, 2025, and I still see it, and I find that very interesting.
And other religions too. The religious community leaders, whether it's an imam or a priest or a local pastor, uh, it's uh, it's it's a control mechanism. Whether it's used by guilt or being part of something and not wanting to be ostracized, so you go along.
Yeah, where I came from, it was hellfire and brimstone was the reasoning for paying attention.
What do you mean by that?
well, you're going to hell if you don't believe exactly the way what you're telling you.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking that's big. I think even like today in that community that I'm mentioning, right? That's probably the tool that's being used. But focusing like on an individual personally and how we get to really start reflecting, right? Reflecting to start figuring out that path we need for liberation. Personal growth, I guess, is a big one, right? Personal growth and being able to connect with ourselves, maybe even with other people that are searching for this. What are like the different practices that you guys would recommend someone to reach out and do? Meditation is one thing I can think of. Breathing techniques, which falls in the line of meditation. Like, what else do you guys think we can utilize for it?
I think any kind of calming methodology is good, and breathing and meditation. But for me, the beginning was logic. It was just taking a moment to sit back and say, does this make any sense? And when you start seeing conflicts in what you're being told, right, then it makes it easier to start asking more questions. And I saw a lot of conflicts in the religious community that I was involved with. And that's what started me to do more things like meditation and so forth, that caused me to be able to not freak out when I was questioning those things that I was told I would go to hell if I didn't believe. Because that can be pretty scary.
Yeah. How about the when we're sitting down and reflecting back, right? As we go back to our childhood and really like analyzing today's world, like technology being like so involved in our lives. It's like that spending time in nature, as a child growing up outside, playing sports, staying active, hide and seek with the neighbors and so forth. That was fun being out there. That's a form of possibly like or a practice that we can utilize to, as we're reflecting, analyze the differences or the comparisons from when you were growing up to today, and analyze, what can we do different to go back to that, because that's so crucial, being out there and spending time outdoors, even walking. As you're walking, you get that fresh air and it helps you think a little clearer. What are your thoughts there, or even other suggestions, Eliza, that you may think would be good for common practice to help people really help as they reflect?
I think both of your examples are fantastic to take a step back and allow yourself to view yourself as an individual. Okay, not as part of the group. So these manipulations don't hold the power. And then from there, I mean, the internet is there also to help us. Is to if the constructs that we're seeing are religion, the legal system, the financial system. Banks not liking your social profile, so they cancel your account. Basically, look for, say, if because we need human contact, and what if that's not your immediate family or your immediate set of friends? You can find a lot of connections through perhaps some people you trust that would say, how can I help my own thinking and my own journey by connecting with a good group of friends or acquaintances that I don't know yet? That's how it was for me. I knew something. I believed in who I was and myself, uh, but I didn't know where to connect, and that came from searching online. And it took several, you know, bumps and redirections. Shouldn't say misdirections, but redirections to where I felt comfortable. Okay, because you eventually something will fit, but be very cautious of the manipulation along the way. But I think the interconnectivity is still important while you're on that personal journey, because very few of us have or want to be the loner on the mountaintop meditating. So I think it's a balance.
Yeah, but do you guys find like possibly that um as we are, you know, going through this, reflecting back and trying to figure this out, as we possibly question and challenge our upbringing within our own family or household, that could probably want to be one of the toughest um, areas, uh, because it is our upbringing, it is our family, and it actually could possibly be the one or the items holding you back, the area that's holding you back. But it's one of the most
Yeah. I,
toughest.
I had to risk being I call it the purple sheep, not the black sheep. I had to risk being the purple sheep because a lot of times that decision to think differently will be will risk what you think is being loved. Okay, because these are the people that are supposed to love you, and when beliefs are very strong, you have a lot of you may risk uh, being judged and not felt being felt feeling loved during that part of your journey.
Or losing the love.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
Exactly what it can be. So it's a choice. It's a choice. But do you go along? Do you just float along, or do you pick up the paddle? And sometimes it risks being purple, and I was okay with that.
You just have to be aware. I mean, that is a possibility, right? You may have to stand on your own for a second there, and but search. Support is there. There's so many of us on that path. We're all searching. We're all reflecting. We're all looking for that. So, a lot of us are, right? I guess we have to, in a way, decide, right? Each of us decide on what matters most. Is it their opinion, or do we matter most, right? And and we have to really understand that we don't have to go with what we were taught. We have choices, and we need to reflect on our true self, even if it does differ from our upbringing.
Yeah, I personally made the choice to kind of disappear. Part of the reason I went overseas was to be able to separate myself from influence. I didn't want to hurt my family, but I also didn't want to give up my own thinking process. So it was easier for me to disappear for 20 years and allow my own self to go through the processes I needed to go through. Everybody can't do that. So my situation is very different than most, I think. But you probably can, people can probably figure out a way to give themselves some separation to be able to develop that freedom of movement and freedom of thinking without feeling oppressed by family expectations.
And I don't personally, I don't have a problem with being a loner. I naturally am okay with being a bit of a hermit. It doesn't mean I don't love people and love, source and want to be with people. But I was okay with stepping away to go on that journey if it dictated it. And eventually it does lead to a community where I then feel comfortable. Not that I have to think like, even in any new community, continue to discern, continue to be on that journey, and then you can help each other to explore and learn. It's not about teaching; it's about going on a journey together, holding a hand, and letting yours be held as well. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I learned at a very, very young age not to allow the el que dirán, right? Like, what are they going to say? Really impact me in my decision making. But I don't know if today, I think I do it to challenge myself. I intentionally, and it's not really like I don't pick to like challenge a specific person. I think it's challenging myself. I tend to always go in the opposite direction of the bigger group intentionally. Not that it's part of my plan, it's just like naturally, it just flows now. It's like because I did learn very early not to worry about anybody else, worry about me and my immediate family. But now it's sort of like it flows with me where I intentionally do that. I just okay, they're all going over there. Okay, no problem. I'm gonna go this way. And it's kind of funny, but it's definitely like people do look at you like they look at you very different when you do that. And I'm okay with it, but you know,
There's actually a
funny.
Mark Twain quote, and I can't remember the quote itself anymore, but when I did have a Facebook account, which was many years ago, I had a quote on there from Mark Twain that was my byline on it. And it was something about whatever the majority is doing, I'm going the other way because they are always wrong.
Exactly. Exactly. There's an inner guide that helps you to do that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There's an inner niggle that says, why should I think that way? Because I'm not necessarily pulled that way.
But then we look at it today, right? Like really analyze again all the information that's given to us in a second through the internet and so forth is like where you do see masses of people just doing something that you know for a fact. Why are you doing that? Right? It's like, and I don't know. I mean, like to this moment, with all the information we have, it's crazy that you still have masses of people just going in one direction and they're okay with it. Yeah. It's crazy. But yeah, intentionally, I do it definitely for challenge for myself.
My guess is that the largest majority of the people that are listening to us and that have an interest in what we're talking about are kind of like us, just somewhere along that line where there's that question in their own mind, and they may be at different levels of how they've processed it. But those people that are really committed to following the crowd and being normal probably wouldn't listen to what we're saying for more than a couple minutes and then run the other way.
It's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to run that other way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the theme of what we were talking about today, that all of this relates to, is that are we meant to suffer in order to achieve what our goal is? Okay, do we have to go through hell or in order to gain heaven? Or is it that the journey to heaven can be something fulfilling with bumps, and that's fine, but it isn't meant to be, for me, I finally accepted. And I was raised in, hey, religious guilt and whatever it was, that to keep one on the straight and narrow. But we don't have to go through that in order to gain an endpoint that is fulfilling.
I think it can drive us nuts. It can drive us nuts just thinking of how some people need to tolerate, unbearable conditions. Just the thought of it, right? To sit down and analyze. I mean, we're very fortunate here in the U.S. Compared to, of course, the community I came from. But even to just think what other what other people may be going through compared to our situation. All it takes is really to go outside and uh, travel through your community to see that you are probably better off than what you see out there. But it's still important for us to be true to ourselves, um, and challenge ourselves so we can start progressing and moving in the direction we should. It's just so important that, you know, if you do not know, where to begin or where to start or who to reach out for, I mean, you're at the right place today. And one of the things that I want to move into is the thought of, or the statement that I ran into that really is like, I take it to heart, right? When the statement that I hear of, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge is so true. It's so strong. And you know, the tolerating unbearable conditions is because we are lacking knowledge. If we can definitely, start educating ourselves or asking questions or getting curious, I think we can definitely, improve our situation no matter what situation we're in. And I know some of us are in tougher situations than others, but it goes to the thought there, Eliza, of, the way I look at it, right? When you mentioned hell and heaven a second ago is, lack of knowledge leads to destruction, which is equivalent to hell. And while we're seeking, embracing knowledge and um, you know, knowledge leads us to life and liberation. So it's just definitely, you know, a statement that I take to heart and really pay attention to it.
Well said.
So to kind of summarize to the folks that are listening, if you can relate to what we're saying because you've got something under the surface that's telling you things aren't exactly like I thought they were, and you're willing to begin to question those, then keep listening. There may be something here that will assist you, and I hope we can be useful to you as we work through this book and go through these concepts to help and encourage you to go inside and see what's right for you and not listen to so much to the noise of people telling you, but instead go inside and ask the question internally of what's right for me. And there's a guide there if you're listening.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming out tonight and talking through this. And we will be back at it shortly on another episode, and we'll go into the cycles of control next time. seeing how this type of manipulation can be purposefully put into place in order to control masses through cyclical processes, so that people kind of go through a waveform of, okay, it's almost unbearable. Oh, now they make it to where, oh, it's bearable again. So you'll hang on till the next cycle, and then it's almost unbearable. And this kind of thing may just have been happening throughout the ages.
I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah.
It's been great, guys. Eliza, Ken, thank you so much. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reina, Stella, and Ken.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
The views expressed in this Liberty Ark podcast are for informational and educational purposes only. They do not constitute legal or tax advice, and they may not reflect the official positions of anyone at all, really. We want to express our appreciation to the authors of the unpublished manuscript titled The Great International Heist, on which the Liberty Ark podcast is based. Rebecca and Jonathan Rodrigues, the authors, provide courses that go into much greater depth and are available at libertyarkpodcast.com/White Rabbit.